Fair warning, you are absolutely in this video. All 9 draft day fan archetypes explained. The mock draft addict has been running simulations since February, and not just 1 or 2 of them. He has run 47 different scenarios and keeps a personal big board that gets updated after every pro day or injury report. He tracks every anonymous quote from a scout who talked to a reporter who talked to a janitor near the facility. He knows the name of every interior lineman from the Sun Belt Conference, along with their 40 times and hand sizes. Ask him who his team's starting center was last season and he goes quiet. The psychological glitch here isn't about football, it's about control. Losing seasons are painful and because they're completely out of your hands, but mock drafts give you something to manage. You can build the perfect roster on paper and feel like the guy making decisions instead of the guy suffering from them. For a few months every spring, the front office is just a subordinate who keeps ignoring your advice. When draft night arrives and this guy gets taken 2 picks early by a divisional round, it's a personal attack. He'll spend the next 4 hours explaining to anyone nearby exactly how badly this office botched the pick while refreshing his next mock to figure out the pivot at pick 34. The YouTube scout watched 6 minutes of highlights at 1.5 speed and is now fully prepared to tell you that this Division II receiver is the next Jerry Rice. He doesn't know what a route tree is and couldn't explain zone coverage if his entire fantasy team depended on it. He's never watched a full game of tape in his life, and the phrase contested catches sounds like something you do at a fish fry. The real tell is the vocabulary he uses to sound like an expert. He throws around phrases like elite athleticism and high ceiling and scheme fit without being able to define any of them. He picked those words up from a YouTube channel that picked them up from a podcast that picked them up from an actual scout. By the time those terms reached him, they lost all their meaning and became a costume he wears to sound credible. When draft night comes and the team actually selects this guy, he didn't just watch highlights, he personally discovered this player. In his mind, the front office finally listened to him after years of dysfunction and bad decisions. He'll post about it for the next 3 days and tell the story of how he knew back in January, at least a dozen times before training camp starts. Quick favor, if you're seeing yourself in any of these, hit subscribe. More takes like this every week. Those 2 at least did their homework, even if the homework was wrong. The next guy skipped it entirely and went straight to the verdict. The draft grade expert doesn't wait for the player to take a snap or even shake the commissioner's hand before he starts typing. 30 seconds after the pick drops, he's filed his report and delivered a final verdict that treats the kid's entire career like a finished book. His grading system has nothing to do with whether the player actually helps the team win games. It's based entirely on whether the pick matches the pre-draft consensus, which is just a fancy way of saying he's recycling the same 5 takes he's heard since January. Expected pick gets a B, surprise pick gets a D. Front office trades up, he calls it an overpay before anyone has watched the guy's college tape. The receipts on this archetype are brutal. Mel Kiper Jr. graded the 2017 Patrick Mahomes pick a C+ because the Chiefs supposedly had other needs at the time. The most efficient quarterback in the history of the league got a C+ because some guy in a studio wanted them to draft a linebacker instead. Those grades are still out there on the internet, but you won't see anyone linking to them today. That's the move the draft grade expert pulls off every single year. When the player busts, he claims he was skeptical from day one and makes sure you hear about it. When the player becomes a Pro Bowler, the original grade quietly disappears and gets replaced with a story about how he always saw the hidden upside. The timestamp never survives the rewrite, but the narrative always does. Post your takes in real time or they don't count. That's the only rule. Archetype 4 is the we're losing the offseason pessimist. Every pick is a reach, every trade is highway robbery executed against his team specifically, and every player who went 2 spots earlier is a future All-Pro. He believes every rival team is drafting legends while his own front office is lighting money on fire. The pessimist operates on a closed loop where nothing good can happen because nothing good has ever happened in his life as a fan. His natural habit is the comment section at 11 at night on day 2, right after a 6th round pick of a tight end from a mid-major school. He types, "This organization is a joke," with the energy of someone who's been holding his breath all day just to say it out loud. Every developmental project is proof of incompetence, and every trade down is an act of cowardice. The pessimist and the optimist are mirror images of each other, and they're both wrong at almost exactly the same rate. The optimist crashes in September when the rookie struggles, but the pessimist never has to crash because he already assumed the disaster was coming. Losing seasons aren't just disappointing to him anymore. They've become a personality and a reflex so deeply wired that he manufactures failure before the player throws a single pass in a preseason game. When your team trains you to expect nothing for decades, expecting nothing starts to feel like wisdom. It isn't wisdom. It's just grief that found a more comfortable outfit to wear while watching the draft. The booze everything fan doesn't need to know who got picked, he just needs to know who his team passed on. The moment the name gets announced, he runs a 2-second calculation to see if it's the specific skill position he wanted. If the answer is no, the boo is already leaving his body before the player's name finishes echoing through the draft theater. He once booed a future Pro Bowler because the team drafted an offensive tackle when he wanted a flashy wide receiver. He has no interest in the argument that elite tackles are harder to find than receivers, or that protecting the quarterback is how you actually get the ball to the playmakers. He wanted a weapon and got a 300-pounder who blocks other big people, and to him, that's unacceptable. The boo isn't really about the pick. The boo is a performance where the fan publicly announces his suffering to remind everyone that he's earned the right to distrust this organization. Draft night is one of the few moments where you can express years of built-up frustration at full volume and have thousands of people join in. The boo is the product he's selling, and the pick is just the excuse to start the show. This archetype peaks loudest in Philadelphia and New York, but don't get comfortable if you root for a team in the Midwest. Every fan base has this guy, and he's probably sitting 3 rows behind you at your team's draft party right now. If the tackle looks good in preseason, that same fan will be wearing his jersey by week 4. The boo evaporates, the jersey purchase becomes permanent, and he'll swear he was always a believer. The overreacting optimist watched the exact same pick and immediately started calculating playoff seeding for the next 3 years. Every pick is a steal, every trade is a masterclass in asset management, and by the 3rd round, he's convinced his team has already won the draft. By the end of day 2, he believes they've quietly assembled a Super Bowl roster that the national media is just too slow to recognize. He genuinely believes this is the year everything changes, which is what makes him so dangerous to stand next to. Studies on fan behavior show NFL supporters predict their teams will average 9.6 wins going into a season, which adds up to 307 total wins across 32 teams in a league where only 256 are possible. The optimist isn't an outlier in the fan base, he's the median, just running that bias at full speed while the broadcast is still on the air. He isn't delusional because he's uninformed, he's delusional because the offseason sells one product and one product only, and that product is the permission to believe in something again. After a long season of hard evidence and losing, draft day hands everyone a clean slate. The optimist just accepts that offer more completely than anyone else in the room. The crash usually comes in week 1. The rookie gets 2 targets and drops 1, and the same guy who penciled his team into the conference championship is already posting about a trade request by halftime. The next one is a recent mutation that social media helped create. The "I knew it all along" revisionist never posts his takes in real time, and that's the first big tell. Every opinion he shares about a draft pick arrives only after the verdict is already in, and he words everything carefully to sound like he was the first person to say it. If a player turns into a Pro Bowler, this guy was always high on him coming out of college. If that same player washes out by year 2, he claims he flagged those concerns the second the pick happened. The timeline never holds up when you look at the dates, but his confidence is absolute. Go back and try to find his actual draft night posts and you won't find much of anything, because the revisionist knows that real-time takes are receipts, and receipts are liabilities. He watched what happened to the draft grade experts and noticed that specific predictions aged badly, so he stopped predicting and started reacting, then pretended the reaction was a prediction the whole time. It's a much cleaner operation for his ego. Being wrong in public feels like a threat to his entire identity, so his brain goes back and edits the file. It isn't exactly lying, because over enough time, that revised version starts to feel like the original memory. Sports fans do this constantly, but the revisionist has turned it into a full-time lifestyle where he can't tolerate a miss. In his own mind, his track record is spotless because the failures never officially happened. You see this archetype most often in sports media, where it's been a professional standard for decades, but now it's filtered down into every corner of fan culture. Every group chat has that one guy whose football wisdom is exclusively retrospective. Trust the people who got it wrong out loud. Those are the only people whose opinions you can actually verify. The last archetype on this list doesn't need a deep psychological breakdown. He just needs a podium and 30 seconds of your time. The Goodell Booer shows up every single year and plants himself near the front of the crowd, fully prepared for the exact second Roger Goodell walks to the microphone. The booing starts before Goodell finishes his first step onto the stage, and sometimes it starts the moment his name appears on the big screen. The Goodell Booer treats this like a civic obligation, a ritual with the same weight and regularity as a national holiday. This tradition goes all the way back to 2007, Goodell's first draft as commissioner, and fans haven't skipped a single year since. What started as genuine labor frustration peaked during the 2011 lockout when the crowd chanted "We want football" directly at his face, but now it's calcified into something that doesn't even need a specific reason. Boo is the grievance, and the boo is the whole speech. He doesn't need to itemize his complaints because everyone in the building already shares them, and half the country watching at home is nodding along. The mock draft addicts and the pessimists are all running team-specific software, but the Goodell Booer runs universal firmware. He's the only archetype on this list that crosses every fan base and every market. A Bills fan and a Jets fan can actually agree on something loudly without hesitation. In a sport that manufactures division as a business model, that's actually worth something. The trade-up anxiety fan doesn't react to the pick, he reacts to the price tag. The second his team trades up, his brain goes straight to the math. He knows the Jimmy Johnson trade value chart from 1993. He knows what economists Massey and Thaler proved about teams systematically overpaying by more than 50% when they move up. And he's going to walk you through both of those things whether you asked or not. Every future first-round pick surrendered is a hole he can already see forming in the roster 3 years from now. He doesn't care who the player is, he cares what the team gave up to get him. The Saints trading their entire 1999 draft plus 2 future picks, 8 picks total for Ricky Williams at 5th overall, lives rent-free in this guy's head, even though it happened before some current NFL players were born. He keeps that trade in his back pocket the way other fans keep Super Bowl highlights. It's his proof that front offices will always find a way to light the future on fire for a player who hasn't earned $1 of his contract yet. When the trade-up works, he admits the player is good while immediately pointing out they could have had him 12 spots later for a 3rd-round pick. He doesn't celebrate wins, he audits them. Drop a comment and let me know which archetype hits closest to home for you, and subscribe for more takes nobody else will give you.